Alrighty, so I'm going to start us off with a prayer and then we'll get into it. So, Jesus, thank you so much for who you are and your character. Help us just be receptive to you and just to learn more about what words you've given us and how to apply it to our lives. In your name I pray, amen. Alrighty, so I use a passage Romans 7 through 12, and basically it's talking about the purpose of the law and why it was given and like why we as humans struggle to actually like fall in line with that. So basically the purpose of the law is to expose the sinful heart. The law itself is good, but we can't follow it because of our sin. And so I actually want to start up with a small story from my childhood just to kind of explain just like this in action. So when I was growing up, I lived in a small house with my siblings. At the time, it was just me and my two sisters. I now have a younger brother, but he wasn't in the picture. And so me and my sister, I believe, either shared a room or we were doing something in one of our rooms, and my sister had brought this pack of M&Ms. And so the rule in my house was we can't have any food in our room. I don't know why she brought it in there, but we ended up opening it anyway, and then I ate some of the M&Ms because I wanted some, but I knew I wasn't supposed to do it, and I felt guilty about it. And so fast forward, a couple days or whatever, my mom, she finds the empty pack of M&Ms in her room, and then she asked me and my sisters, okay, who ate the M&Ms? Like, y'all knew you weren't supposed to do that. So she lines all of us outside of the room, and she's like, okay, who did it? And then she asked my sister, she's like, did you eat it? She's like, no. She asked my other sister, she's like, did you eat it? She said, no. She asked me who ate them, and then she's like, did you eat it? I said, no. She's like, okay, one of y'all are lying. I know one of y'all are lying because obviously the M&Ms have been eaten. And so she asked us all again. She's like, okay, did y'all eat them? She asked each of us, we each said no. So mom's like, okay, I know one of you are lying. And so in order to punish the liar, I'm going to have to punish all of you. Because that way, at least a person who is guilty is being punished. And so my sisters were like, that's so not fair. And in my mind, I was like, that's not fair. But yet I still, in my heart of hearts, knew that I was lying. And yet I did it anyway. And there was this tension, because I was like, I want to do the right thing, but I'm scared if I were to say something, I'll get punished. But yeah, I know what I'm doing is wrong. So it's like, why is there that tension? And so I've since forgotten what the consequences were, but that's besides the point. The point is that even though I knew the truth, I still wasn't doing it anyway. And so this tension that I felt between I know what's right and I know what's wrong, yet I still choose to do wrong when I want to do right, it's being felt everywhere by people today. It's a tongue between right and wrong, life and death, between the law and sin. And so especially for believers, kind of if you look at your life, you'll probably at some point, maybe even today or just in your life, you'll be like, I know what I'm supposed to do, and I know that the law is good, but I don't want to do it for some reason. There's this tension, I don't know why. And so sometimes we ask ourselves why is that? Is it because I haven't trusted in the Lord? Is it a heart issue? Is it a salvation issue? What is this? And so while I can't speak for anyone but myself, what I have learned is that when the believer does get a new heart, they receive a new identity in Christ, their heart is made new, yet their physical body and the flesh is still of sin. And so because of that, there's tension. There's this tension that the flesh says, I need to be right. I want to override the good. I'm used to this. I've been born into it, and so I want to do this. But then the heart of Christ says, no, sin is no longer your ruler. I'm a ruler now. I need to fight back against this. And so there's this war between it and the body constantly. So we're constantly fighting between this right and wrong, this good and the bad. And we're kind of left wondering, what is the problem? How do I fix that? So let's talk about it. So if you'll turn with me to Romans 7 through 12, this is what it says. It says, what then shall we say? That the law is sin? By no means. Yet if it had not been for the law, I would have not known sin. For I would have not known what it is to covet if the law had not said, you shall not covet. But sin, seizing an opportunity through the commandment, produced in me all kinds of covetousness. For apart from the law, sin lies dead. I was once alive apart from the law, but when the commandment came, sin came alive and I died. The very commandment that promised life proved to be death to me. For sin, seizing an opportunity through the commandment, deceived me and through it killed me. So the law is holy, and the commandment is holy and righteous and good. And so when Paul is talking about the law, he's actually referring to the hundreds of commandments given in the Torah. From Moses to the people. So he's referring to all the things where it's hey, do this, don't do that. That's what Paul's referring to in this sense. And so basically these verses say the law is good and that we humans are not. But if we back up to verse 6, it actually says that we have been released from the law. in that it held us captive, but now because of the new spirit, we are not slaves to the written code. So it seems contradictory of like, wait, so it says that the law is good, but then also saying that we're not slaves to it anymore. So like, what does he mean by that? And so verse 6, when it's saying that we have been free from the law, it's referring to what the law's purpose is. Verse 6 is referring to the law's purpose of who or what is atoning for the sins of Israel. So back in the Old Covenant, when someone sinned, the law itself was still good. It's still pointing out that the human heart was sinful, but the atonement came when they had to sacrifice an animal, or they had to wait for the Day of Atonement with the high priest, or things like that. But once the new covenant came with Jesus, Jesus is now the ultimate sacrifice. So now we no longer have to think in our minds, oh, okay, I have to atone for like every single sin I've ever done with an animal sacrifice. I can now, through Jesus, as a perfect sacrifice, come to him, and he's atoned for all of my sins. So that way salvation is through Jesus and not through animal sacrifice. And so the law, like Christ is the one that fulfills the law. And so the law in and of itself is good. And actually, as it says in verse 7, yet if it had not been for the law, I would have not known what it was to sin. Sin in and of itself like is revealed to us because of the law. Because in our brokenness, apart from God's goodness, like we in ourselves wouldn't even know what goodness or righteousness is unless Christ came and demonstrated that to us. And so that was the purpose of the law. Basically, God was like, hey, I'm going to give you like this set of commandments that are good and righteous and holy and pure. And I want you to follow these to set you apart from the other nations. I want you to follow these to show that you're my people. Even though these laws are perfect, and I know you can't follow them, I still want you to follow them. Even though I know you can't, that's the whole point. Because it shows that the human heart is evil and that you need me. Because apart from me, you wouldn't have even known that you needed to do these perfect things.
Yeah.
And so, because of that, sin actually uses the law to purposefully showcase itself. It actually says in verse 10 that like the very commandment that promised life to me proved to be death to me. So when first looking at this, it might be like, wait, so the commandment is causing me death? That's actually not what it's talking to. Basically, in doing my research, the way it was explained is that sin in and of itself tries to convince you that when you follow sin, you'll live like this high life, and that the laws are like super restrictive. And that's like, oh, like I don't want rules, I don't want regulations, like those are bad. Like I can do my own thing, and like if I follow my own laws, my own heart, then it'll be good. Basically, the law, like, comes in and says, no, you can't do that. And so the law that's giving life, this law particularly referring to like the law of like sin, the rules that sin is trying to come like to tell you to follow. God's law is acting as a magnifying glass to show that the laws of sin that's trying to get you to follow leads to death, and leads not to life, and leads to things that are not good. So when it says the commandment that was promised me life proved to be death to me, it's showing that like sin has been death all along, and that the commandments, like the law given through Moses, given in the Torah, given to the people of Israel, are to promote life, to show that they need the Lord so much. And so the thing is that like the law demands perfection, and we can't do that. So that's why we need Jesus.
Right.
And so when Jesus came to earth, lived as a man, died on the cross, and provided that way for us to follow him, now we no longer are slaves to the law in the sense that it's like he's our new salvation. Like, yes, the law is still good. We are expected to follow it in the sense that we need to be perfect, but now we no longer rely on our own ways or an old sacrifice, like a sacrificial method. We rely on Christ.
Yeah.
And so through him, he provided a perfect way for the law to be fulfilled, and for our hearts to be renewed. And so if you find yourself like in this tension where it's like, man, I don't really know what to do, I don't really know how to go about this, just ask God, like, can you please help me? Because actually that tension and that awareness of I want to do what's right, but I'm doing what's wrong is actually a good thing, because it's showing that God is working in you. It's showing that you're like that new heart of Christ is inside of you, going into that human nature, which is good. So ask him to be like, God, I don't know what to do right now. Please help me, and he will be faithful. And so just my call to action is to just be aware of this and be open to surrender. And just even through kind of that anxious state, just know that you're in a good spot because that tension is good at showing that Christ is working in you.
Yeah. Well, that